All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And thank you, everyone. My gosh, the New Year audience is so special. I really want to remark on it. It seems as though it's grown, and there is nothing like some New Year's applause to get me out of bed. If I can just, of course, it was a while ago that I got out of bed, many, many hours ago, and honestly, there was no applause when I got out of bed. But this applause makes up for it. Look, I don't want to focus on the applause. It's such a superficial thing to focus on. But Albert is here, everyone. Yeah.
Albert, thank you.
And Albert is doing the show with me by ourselves today. No Kim. Kim is handling a family situation, so we will be just the two boys today. I have had all kinds of computer issues. Not that I want to bring you into my nightmare, but it has been a really brutal morning, which is why we are today on the air a couple of minutes behind. But we will make up that time in flight, as they like to say in the airline business. Mike Johnson up for speakership. Do you know who the first Republican was to vote against him for speaker? I'll tell you in just a second. It's sort of an interesting fact. You'll appreciate it. Also, an update on a KGO friend. This show was born out of a radio show called the Mark Thompson Show, which is why we call it that here. But the radio station was called KGO. And I want to acknowledge something that's going on with an alumnus of KGO in just a minute. But first, I want to mention other things that are happening on the show. Hour 2 starts with Michael Shure. We'll talk politics, and we will get into that in a big, big way. Florida, of course. We do Friday Fabulous Florida on Fridays. And Michael Snider, the Culture Blaster, joins us at the bottom of the second hour. Also, in this first hour, I will discuss the increasing nature of a radicalized populace, even as one-offs. So these are lone wolves, as you know. The FBI, after an investigation, and the investigation is ongoing, obviously, but they don't link these two events from New Year's Day, the Cybertruck explosion, suicide bomber, and the situation in New Orleans that took the lives of so many sweet souls who were just there to celebrate the new year. They don't link them, but there are eerie similarities, and both of them seem to have some kind of connection to a new devotion to extremism in the form of ISIS. So we will get into a little bit of that as the show continues as well. And I have way more than that. We're watching in real time the vote for the leader of the House. This, you can't, again, there it is. Albert has it up for you now, and then you can just see sort of the House having convened. But you can't really continue with anything, as we've told you several times, anything on the House side without a speaker. You won't have a House of Representatives, if you want to think of it that way. And without a House, I will remind you yet again, you can't certify the election, among other things. So Donald Trump has endorsed Mike Johnson for Speaker, but that may or may not be enough. As you know, we've seen House members break against Donald Trump. And the only way that the House has gotten anything done is with the help of Democrats. I mean, really, that's the key to everything the House has gotten done. The continuing resolution, all of the things that are associated with keeping the government open, those were deals made by Johnson with Democrats because he didn't have enough Republican support. And I mention that because he won't get that support from Democrats on this. So this could really be a true problem for him. And just because I've started it on the, this could turn into a McCarthy deal where it's dragged out over a couple of days, multiple votes. But just because I've started this, Albert, the first the first Republican to vote against Johnson, to not vote for Mike Johnson for the House, is Representative Thomas Massie. Now, he's from Kentucky. That may or may not mean anything to you. He's notable, I think, for his Christmas card of a couple of years ago. Do you remember the Christmas card? That is Thomas Massie with his family. That was their Christmas card. They're all holding assault-style weapons. So if you're listening and you're not watching on YouTube, let me just tell you that it's a lovely family. They're all there with big smiles on their faces, and they're all holding weapons, assault-style rifles. So, Merry Christmas. And that's the guy who was the first guy to vote against Mike Johnson for the speakership. We will monitor the speakership vote and see how it's going, but I look forward maybe to making that Christmas list and getting that Christmas card next year. So.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Now, before I get in any further, I want to acknowledge something that's going on with a KGO alum. This guy is, even if you're not a radio listener who's aware of KGO, which is the station we really came from, the thing you need to know about this guy is he was a dominant presence in San Francisco radio, Bay Area radio, California radio. He worked in Los Angeles while also doing a show in San Francisco for a time. He was a Bay Area radio legend, really. And this other thing you should know about him, because this is something that's, I think, extraordinary and extends beyond the Bay Area. At the height of Rush Limbaugh's power, where he controlled everything, you'll remember. I mean, he was the right-wing voice. So dominant was Rush Limbaugh that politicians in Washington, national politicians, responded to things he had said on his show. He got into the Bay Area like a wrecking ball, but the one thing he couldn't wreck was the #1 rating status of this guy, Ronn Owens. Ronn Owens never lost one rating book to Rush Limbaugh, and I love that fact. So Ronn Owens got Parkinson's disease, and he also endured and continues to endure some ongoing health struggles. And this just ran, and a couple of you reached out to me, and I wasn't aware of it. It just ran in the Mercury News, this article about the fact that he has a GoFundMe campaign that's been set up by friends because the Parkinson's disease and colon cancer and 4 bouts of other cancers and some serious heart issues, is what they're saying in the piece, all have led to it being a really rough time for Ronn Owens. And he said to the Mercury News reporter, quote, "It's been a rough road, and honestly, it's hard to admit that the financial strain has been overwhelming on top of everything else. For 48 years, I poured my heart into KGO," again, that's a radio station in San Francisco, "sharing stories, sparking conversations, and connecting with you all. But here I am asking for a little help from the community that has meant so much to me." Now, I talked to Ron and Jan yesterday, and you can see their GoFundMe there, and I wanted to make sure it was legit. And the truth is that it is legit. Jan and Ron said that, yeah, they are wanting to make clear, this is really important, and they emphasize this. They said, please tell your audience, if you mention it, that this GoFundMe campaign is designed to help us through what has been a really dark period financially in terms of treating Ron with all of these physical challenges. But I don't want your audience, any one of them, to give their last dollar to Ron or any of that. In other words, if you can do it comfortably, they said, then do it. But don't know this. They have Social Security. They have, these sort of very modest ways in which they can continue with some sort of revenue stream, but they do need help. But they don't want you to give your last dollar, So I'm just looking to see if there's any other pertinent information I could give you. They do note that when he first went public about being diagnosed with Parkinson's, he did it after Robin Williams' wife initially reported that Robin Williams had Parkinson's. And that was a few days after Williams took his own life. And he said, I felt it was important to tell people that you can have it. And I have for 12 and a half years and had not been severely impacted by it, Ron said. Ron has just defied all sorts of, might I say, forecasting as to what might have happened to him, because he continued with the radio show. He had an operation, one of those electric things. They stick it in your head, and it really took care of his Parkinson's. I remember seeing him, and he held up his hand. It was completely steady. Well, now, of course, with the passage of years, things are tougher, and so it is legit, and I mention it to you because many of you have reached out to me and said, is this legitimate? And did you know about it? And I didn't know about it, and it is legitimate. So that's the situation with our friend Ronn Owens.
And Ron is still part of our show today. I still use his drop very often.
What the hell is going on in the United States of America?
That's our Ronnie. Yeah. So support him if you can comfortably there on GoFundMe. So
The Mark Thompson Show.
I do miss those days with Ronn Owens and, KGO, and what a great station it was and is no longer. So I also have one other item that I think you will appreciate before I get into the heavy stuff. Jimmy Carter passed away, as you know. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott responded to the death of former President Jimmy Carter by sending condolences to Carter's wife, Rosalind, everyone. Yes.
Oh,
yeah, such a nice
awfully
gesture.
Nice of someone like Jim Abbott to do.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the fact that he's so busy as Texas governor, Greg Abbott, to be able to take a moment to send a condolence note, it is terrific. Now, I wouldn't look to get an acknowledgement of any kind from Rosalind Carter because she died in 2023. So
What?
Yeah. So, again, maybe check your playbook before you send any kind of condolence. But that is the word out of Greg Abbott's office, the governor of Texas. So with that, we continue, and you'll...
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, I just felt that was a little fact that you would appreciate, and so I share it with you at this time. Well, it is a bizarre fact that ISIS was supposed to have been defeated by the Trump administration. Now, I don't know if you'll recall this, but Donald Trump truly did indicate that ISIS was done. And in so doing, he had mentioned, excuse me, I'm trying to get this. I have got a million different computer issues. Just give me 1 second to try to get this going. But in so doing, he was viewing it essentially as an accomplishment. I mean, it was a victory lap. ISIS is defeated. You have nothing more to worry about. Please move about the cabin. But what we've learned is that despite the fact that the former president, Donald Trump, claimed ISIS was done, there is a radicalization around ISIS philosophies that continues in this country. I'd also argue that, there are cells of ISIS that continue as well worldwide. And now the FBI is investigating this attack as an act of terrorism. Again, the ISIS flag was flown from the bumper of this truck that was driven by Jabbar. And Biden is saying that security briefings that he's gotten show that Jabbar was inspired by ISIS and wanted to kill for the ISIS cause. Now, it is also worth noting, and I sent it to you, Albert, didn't I? The walking tour of the home of Jabbar. He had a lot of bomb-making materials. He had a lot of stuff in his house that was associated with this sort of homegrown terrorism. And this is an important point. These might be lone wolves. These might be one-offs. But the point is, they found some sort of rallying focus around ISIS ideology, and that has led to these acts of terror. And in a minute, I'm going to get to the military part of this, but what is concerning is the way in which ISIS has somehow become a, here it is. This is from the New York Post, I think they did this. Go ahead, Albert, run this. I don't know if we're going to get, are you worried about getting demonetized, or we'll be okay?
I think. Yesterday, but if we walk through the home, we see some signs of what he was up to. He had this work area here, lots of different chemicals splayed around, and different electronics. This is, again, a work setup. Left receipts, just very unkempt in here. If we go over here, actually, you can see the Department of Justice documents here, the search warrant, and the property that they recorded here, which seems to be a lot of chemicals. Again, just left in disarray. There's a bedroom back here, and his, what appears to be his collection of religious materials, his Qurans, an open Quran with a passage there, as well as even the Bible here, but mostly books on Islam, and his prayer rug just to the left of me here. And if we go back, there's another bedroom here. You can see he left all these belongings, contact lenses, personal belongings, bathroom. This seems to be some sort of workspace, again, with other chemicals here. The light's still on, some kind of station set up here. We're not really sure what that was for. In, what we can assume was also a bedroom. You can see clothes left here, and just a sign that someone was here up until those last few moments when neighbors said he left just before the New Year's holiday, saying he was done with his lease. It was up and he was on his way to New Orleans, where he would live there. Didn't take any furniture because he said his new home would be furnished. That's all we know so far.
So that's interesting. It was from the New York Post, which is why I run it. And I also asked the question that some of you are asking, like, who is this woman? How did she get access to his home? I don't know the answers to that. So I'm presuming that it's legitimacy based on the fact that the Post ran it, because I'm really unable to verify it beyond that. But the point is, I just thought it was a curiosity factor, frankly, that you might be interested in seeing it. And also, it works into what we're talking about, which is that, look, he may be a lone wolf. He was radicalized, clearly around ISIS ideologies. He had the means, the substantial means to set up IEDs, to not only produce the kind of mayhem and carnage that he did, but to essentially set up other ways in which there would be loss of life. I'm talking about those bombs, essentially. He set up his home as kind of a bomb-making outfit, and there were other weapons there as well. So his radicalization, though, I would say, and this is the consistent feature in both of these terrorist attacks, the Cybertruck situation as well, the radicalization didn't occur in a vacuum, right? There might have been philosophical, theological things that he sparked to with the world of Islam, but this is radical Islam. This is not sort of mainstream Islam. And again, the stressors in his life have to be recognized. So this is a guy who's gone through divorces. Apparently they were contentious. He was also in debt. And these things all lead to extreme, oftentimes, decisions, poor decision making. And in this case, if you are radicalized around an ideology, perhaps they animate these horrendous, heinous acts. But as noted, if he was indeed inspired by ISIS, this is just the latest in a string of resurgent terrorist acts for ISIS. And this is probably the most lethal since the Pulse nightclub shooting in 2016. But it's noted worldwide there has been a resurgence of these kinds of ISIS attacks. The 95 civilians who were killed in that Iranian ceremony that was to commemorate Soleimani, that was the general assassinated by Trump, by America, if you want to think of it that way. And that bombing was followed by an attack on a Roman Catholic church in Istanbul later that month. There was a bloody attack at a concert in Moscow in March. And since last summer, American intelligence agencies have stopped two big plots. One that was planned for the Taylor Swift show in Austria and another for Election Day in Oklahoma City. So these extremist outfits are organizing, and that chaos is spreading worldwide. And more to the point, we're seeing it develop here in America, and we're seeing it develop in strange ways. I mean, you don't associate the military, for example, with the kind of radicalization that we've seen from these military service members. But actually, the U.S. military is one of the strongest, service in the U.S. military is one of the strongest predictors of carrying out extremist violence. I know, it's crazy. But the mass murder in New Orleans and Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas fit a troubling pattern among U.S. vets, according to researchers. This from The Intercept. Two men who carried out the apparent terror attacks on New Year's Day, killing 15 people, plowing a pickup truck into a crowd of New Year's revelers in New Orleans and detonating that Tesla Cybertruck. Both of them had U.S. military backgrounds. And from 1990 to 2010, this is the amazing fact, 7 people a year with U.S. military backgrounds committed extremist crimes, okay? From 1990 to 2010, about 7 per year committed extremist crimes. Since 2011, that number has jumped to almost 45 people a year. This is data from a report that has just been released. And when you look at military service, it is the single strongest individual predictor of becoming a mass casualty offender. It's a weird thing to say because your heart goes to those who have made sacrifices to serve in the military and all the rest. But it far outpaces mental health issues and other stressors that are associated with mass casualty events. From 1990 through 2023, 730 people with U.S. military backgrounds committed criminal acts that were motivated by their political, economic, social, or religious goals. This is according to new data from this report. This report is, it's called START. It's the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism. It's out of the University of Maryland. From 1990 to 2022, successful violent plots that included perpetrators with a connection to the U.S. military resulted in 314 deaths and almost 2,000 injuries. A significant number of those came from the bombing of the federal building in Oklahoma City. That was back in 1995. But when you look at Jabbar, this latest guy, 42 years old, the guy who rammed the pickup truck into the New Year's revelers on Bourbon Street, he fits into this pattern of a radicalized military guy. He served as a human resource specialist, was an information technology specialist between 2007 and 2020. His service included a deployment to Afghanistan from '09 to January of 2010. So it was a short time that he was in Afghanistan. And by the way, he didn't see battle. He was, he was an IT guy, sort of. A staff sergeant at the end of his service, he was, quote, inspired by the Islamic State. And it appears that he was inspired sufficiently to go after this kind of radicalized, horrifying act. Jabbar himself saying that he had a desire to kill. They're also investigating whether this Cybertruck explosion dude, this Matthew Livelsberger, what his story was with the Army. He was active duty Army from '06 to March of 2011. Then he served in the National Guard from 2011 to 2012. In July of 2012, he left that, followed by a stint in the Army Reserve from July of 2012 to December of 2012. So that same month, he rejoined the Army in December of 2012, serving as a U.S. Army Special Operations Officer. He was assigned to U.S. Army Special Operations Command and still serving in the military, but he was on approved leave. So these people with U.S. military backgrounds from 1990 to 2022 plotted 144 individual mass casualty terrorist attacks in the U.S. Again, this is according to this new report. These troops and veterans represent about a quarter of all individuals who plotted mass casualty extremist attacks during that same time span. That's a lot. So, again, the report suggests that while military people and veterans are not, and this is important, not more likely to radicalize to the point of violence than members of the general public, when service members and veterans do become radicalized, they become more likely to plan for or commit mass casualty crimes, and so they have an oversized impact on society and on public safety, is the argument. It's a fascinating revelation, given the fact that, again, we don't think of everyone in the military in this way. In fact, I think we think of them in the opposite way. We think of people who make sacrifice and are willing to go into battle to defend whatever notion they have about what they're defending when it comes to the United States and United States interests. So as we watch this, and we'll get more information over the days ahead, I think it's interesting to note the overwhelming representation of those with military service in the data on mass casualty events. It's a scary and eerie fact, but I thought I would share it with you nonetheless. So that's the story, at least in part, on the way troubled people who have military backgrounds end up radicalized and involved in heinous mass casualty events. So the military does a weak mental health check, or not at all, for new enlistees, says Spencer. I mean, yeah, you ask yourself, about the background check, but let me say this in fairness. I mean, two things. First of all, as you know, their ability to get people in the military is lagging, right? Your numbers in terms of the U.S. military and military recruitment are poor. So I'm sure there is let's just get the warm bodies in there. They've waived a bunch of things. Remember, they waived the weight requirement, and there's a bunch of health requirements that they typically had in the past. They don't have them anymore. And they've certainly become more generous. And I don't know to what extent they can sufficiently check on people's mental states. I mean, these guys are in the military for a while. They probably passed whatever mental background checks there might have been, assuming that there were any. So it's a question. Make re-entry into society a part of exiting military service. Yeah. Thank you, Pushback. That's the comment there. And I don't know what the answer is on this, but I think it is worth noting that look, it's not like going to prison where you have to somehow, when you leave the military, where they evaluate that you're okay to re-enter society. I mean, I think if you've displayed issues within the military, maybe that's appropriate, but otherwise. But this Army base that these guys both served in, it's got trouble, man. There's trouble there at that. Is it Fort Liberty? Didn't they rename it? There were 109 soldiers assigned there in 2020 and 2021. And there were a bunch of deaths there. So this is Fort Bragg. It's now called Fort Liberty. I'll just mention this. And it is home to multiple Army Special Operations units. And apparently, there are issues with people coming out of there. 76 of the 170 mass casualty offenders with military backgrounds served in the Army. And Fort Bragg, yeah, it was Fort Bragg, now it's Fort Liberty. But I was mentioning Fort Liberty because 109 soldiers who were assigned to Fort Liberty died in 2020 and 2021. 109. 96% of those deaths took place stateside. Fewer than 20 of them were from natural causes. Are you registering this? 109 soldiers assigned to Fort Liberty, formerly Fort Bragg, died in 2020 and 2021. 96% of the deaths took place stateside, and fewer than 20 were from natural causes. The remaining soldier fatalities, including unexplained deaths, homicides, dozens of drug overdoses, were preventable. And then, as I say, 76 of those 170 mass casualty offenders with military backgrounds served in the Army. And these soldiers and vets represent more than a half of all Army-affiliated individuals represented in all this data. It's the highest ratio of mass casualty to non-mass casualty offenders for any one military service branch. 32% by comparison of individuals in this data who served in the Marine Corps were mass casualty offenders. So, again, this is just the beginning of the data, but U.S. military service is not what we think it is. I think in the main it is, but I'm just suggesting that they're troubling statistics that come out of this world of, certainly out of the world of Fort Liberty and Fort Bragg, and out of this world of U.S. military service. So, Albert, you're watching chats for me because I can't watch them, and but I'm hoping that lands with many, because I think
I'm watching the chats. I'm also watching the
Johnson vote.
Yes.
Let's get an update on the Johnson vote.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Let's get an update on the Johnson vote. This is key. Johnson has to win in order for there to be a House Speaker and in order for there to be a House of Representatives that would then certify the vote for Donald Trump. Trump has said he wants Johnson. What is the very latest, sir?
Well, from the Hill, they're saying that he failed to secure enough votes on the first ballot.
I'm seeing that he is reelected, though, here. 3 of Mike Johnson's fellow Republicans voted against their party's nominee to lead the House. Despite an endorsement from President-elect Trump, 2, though, changed their votes after a delay on the House floor. And so the latest is that Johnson salvages his bid to win another term. He won over this pair of conservative holdouts, it looks like, who initially voted to not give him the speakership. And he huddled with the hardliners who opposed him. You'll remember the reason they opposed him was what? Because he had made a deal with Democrats to keep the government open. But it looks like Johnson will get the speakership, and he wins re-election. So Mike Johnson and Donald Trump get what they want. And the United States of America has a Speaker of the House. So that's
The Mark Thompson Show.
That's the story. I think there's a lot to this this pair of terrorist attacks that's fascinating. You know, the Cybertruck guy. You know, he and his wife had just broken up. This is what I'm talking about. I mean, they can talk about ISIS, and I do believe these guys are radicalized around a radical Islam or ISIS in some cases, certainly in the cases we're talking about in New Orleans. But what the stressors are that produce this kind of action, they have nothing to do with ISIS, nothing to do with radicalization. They have to do with the stuff that stresses across the board. Romance, money, career, depression. The wife of the U.S. soldier who blew up that Tesla Cybertruck outside the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas broke up with him 6 days before he killed himself. Matthew Levelsberger, 37, left his Colorado Springs home the day after Christmas following an argument with his wife over apparent infidelity. His wife, who had a baby daughter with him, said that she knew he'd been cheating. And after leaving, Leivelsberger rented that Cybertruck through the Turo app, made his way to Vegas, parked in front of the Trump Hotel on New Year's Day, detonated explosives that were stashed there in the truck, and then shot himself in the head. So his motive then may not be political. It may just be personal. And even in the case of the ISIS devotee in New Orleans, the motive, I mean, it's hard to say, you know, what the motive is, but the stressors certainly were not related to radical Islam. They were related to life. And so, you know, to the extent that these bombings, assassination attempts, these one-off lone wolf acts are political statements, we investigate them as political statements. But if they're not political statements, then we don't. And in this case, I think, certainly in the case of the Tesla driver, he may not fall into the category of a guy who was radicalized by extreme Islamic terror and the notion that that's the way to fight back against the West, against values you don't agree with, etc. Anyway, at least the Cybertruck explosion appears to have been connected to personal issues, personal grievances, etc. But, all right. That's it on the terrorism. That's it on Mike Johnson. We'll revisit both with Michael Shure when he joins in the second hour.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Now, I want to make sure I don't miss anything in the chat. A little bit later in the show, I want to recognize some new people who've supported this show. I think they're fairly new to the world of Patreon and PayPal. That's how we support ourselves on this show, also with your super stickers and super chats. But the way we plan on payroll really is the wonderful way in which you support us month to month. And there are some extraordinary support measures. There's some extraordinary donations, I'll just say it, that have come in over the holidays. And it was a very lean period for us in December, so I'm really quite grateful. So we'll get to some of that a little bit later. I don't want to fall too far behind. Albert, you have you've curated Florida, have you not?
I have. I'm working on the polls right now ahead of time.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I love that. In fact, I might, in this moment, American men in a mental health crisis, but very little help in the U.S. Reagan made sure of that. It is hard. Thank you, Pam, for that note. It is hard in this culture and the way in which things are set up for, I mean, just financially, it makes it very, very hard sometimes to get the psychological help that you need. And I'll also say, you know, it's hard sometimes when you work in the armed forces because you don't want to come forward with any sort of issues that you might have. It can affect your career in the armed forces. The U.S. needs to stop holding on to empire status. That's what needs to stop, while this nation can still positively impact world betterment and peace, says Sakayo Mag, Resurgent. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think the general trend from superpower nations is to pull back from the kind of imperialism that defined superpower nations through hundreds of years. But I don't know that, you know, America hasn't been aggressive in leaning into certain theaters of war, the Middle East. Obviously, Ukraine is a proxy war. So you end up certainly asking questions as to exactly what the plan is for the U.S. And then when you have an incoming president-elect who's talking about, you know, taking over Panama and Greenland, I mean, he's just like, he reminds me of like a drunk George Bush, like the younger George Bush who was really a cowboy, knew nothing. Cheney ran most things, but he had a kind of cowboy diplomacy way of going about things. Trump reminds me of him, but if he were drunk, because Trump just says crazy stuff that gets up in the face of even America's allies, taking on Mexico, taking on Canada, then the Panama Canal. So I just don't know where to put Trump in the question around imperialism. I think he's old school. I think his view is, we're America, we're badass, we have a bigger army than anybody, and we're going to take whatever we need. The problem is that is really an old world view of things. We're far more connected than, I mean, I'm talking about worldwide. We're far more connected. We're connected from the consumer economy. We're connected from the overall economy, the oil economy. So there's a degree to which you can shake up the snow globe and really do some damage. And I always put Trump in that category because I just don't think he's aware of the damage that he can do. Maybe he is and doesn't care. It may be more in that category because I think there's a lot of Donald Trump that is just that. He just doesn't care. He doesn't care about anything except those things that affect him. And he wants to be, on some level, popular. But popular with his donor base is really what he's about. In fact, you'll appreciate this. Donald Trump's latest appointment. I was going to do it in a chunk of Trump. You want to do a quick chunk of Trump, or how should I do this? We'll just do the story. You tell me what to do.
We can do a chunk of Trump. I like the.
All right. Okay. So let me bring people up to speed then. All right. With Albert ready, here we go. Your chunk of Trump.
Open wide. Ready? Here comes your chunk of Trump.
It's my favorite food.
With your first bite, here's Mark Thompson.
I have a feeling it's going to be beautiful.
Donald Trump has picked another great American to populate his administration. He is picked for a key tax policy role. A consumer advocate who stands up every day and wonders what can be done to protect the average guy from the predatory nature of the IRS. I'm just kidding. He picked a lobbyist. He picked a lobbyist. Yeah, he picked a corporate lobbyist for this tax policy role. Ken Keyes is his name. And he has a client list, Ken Keyes does, that includes Microsoft, which, as you know, just Microsoft itself stands to benefit from the tax cut that's proposed by Donald Trump to the tune of $4 billion a year. That's just Microsoft, but that's his client. That's his corporate client because he's a lobbyist on behalf of Microsoft. So this corporate lobbyist and Republican donor will serve as the Assistant Secretary for Tax Policy at the Treasury Department. He is right now managing director of the Federal Policy Group, which is a lobbying firm. It was just hired last year by Microsoft. It's also, it names the Cruise Line International Association among its clients, the American Automotive Leasing Association, a lot of corporate interests. So if they succeed in lowering the corporate tax rate to 15%, I mean, Microsoft would get that $4 billion tax break, and this guy Keys would have paid off for his clients in a big, big way. Lobby from the outside, then you make a huge donation. Now you're on the inside, and you can lead efforts to enact legislation to get your clients big breaks. That's exactly what the plan is. And so Ken Keys will be the corporate lobbyist who occupies that tax role for Donald Trump. The other thing to note is that right after that New Orleans terror bombing, Donald Trump claimed that it was Biden's immigration and border policy that led to that terrorism. I noted this for you yesterday, but I think it worth noting again. The desire to jump in on every major awful event and blame the Democrats for it, or just politicize it at all, and it's an extraordinary thing. And it exists against a backdrop, when it comes to immigration, of the lowest immigration in 4 years. So when you look at the border, I mean, you can keep playing the hits, which is what they do, talking about the Democrats and their open border policy. But the reality is, this, quote, open border policy, we've got the lowest southern border immigration in 4 years. And of course, this guy was an American, born and raised in Texas. That's your chunk of Trump.
That's it for this edition.
Well, I really enjoyed it.
But make sure to join us again next time
I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening.
for another chunk of Trump.
Right on, everybody, right on. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
right on, everybody. I am delighted that you are here. And I was just going to note that, well, I have my Coachella Valley coffee right here, and it's quite... It's quite lovely. This is the last of the holiday blend that I'm drinking today. And I also wanted to mention to you that it's coming to me and to my magical lips that my Coachella Valley coffee. It's rich. It's delicious. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. This is the We Could Try Ignoring It, Sir mug that you can find on our website, getmarkmerch.com. With our logo in front. These are the new white mugs. You'll see these are the black mugs from before. That's how we started. Now the new year has brought new colors. And so getmarkmerch.com is where you get it. Yeah, we have the T-shirts, and there is the logo. And a lot of you have rocked the logo from various locations and sent it to us. Did I send you any of those, Albert? The pictures from anyone, or... Have we shared all of those? Maybe we have already.
We shared a couple, some of them in China too, I think. Some other.
Yeah, that's right. There's some stuff in China. There was in front of the Supreme Court from the Christmas celebrations. But anyway, and you'll see that the year-end sale is over. So now it's a little more expensive. So check it out, though, and you can find just the thing that you want. But anyway, I mentioned it because I'm drinking out of this cup. So, Albert, here is the thing that I've noticed about this cup, and I don't know quite how to handle it. And it is, oddly, something that could fall into the category of we could try ignoring it, sir. When I drink it, you'll see, if you look at the bottom of the mug, there's writing on the bottom. And the writing says, can you see it? Made in China. Now, I can't do anything about that. I'm sorry. You may see that and may bum you out. that it's made in China. But I'm guessing
wanted
there's
to
a lot of
apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
I really, I'm not surprised that the stuff's made in China. Let me just say the Chinese do a lot of quality work. Can I say
What?
All right. I use this mug. I love this mug. The "We Could Try Ignoring It, Sir" mug is on sale today at getmarkmerch.com, and don't be put off by that. I hang a light on it. We could try ignoring the fact that it's made in China, but it's right there on the bottom of the mug. I'm thinking of putting a little sticker on the bottom to kind of cover that, but that doesn't really bother me, to be honest. Anyway, those are the various designs. Courtney has headed up a lot of that, and she'll be in next week to talk about that, or to talk about something. We'll have her on next week, and she'll update us. John, there is no lead in our mugs. Please, how dare you? How dare you? I'm just ignore it, says Tammy. Exactly. That's the exactly. So it is with great excitement that I offer it to you, and I'm drinking from it today, and it's delicious. And Coachella Valley Coffee is, A, it's the best coffee on earth. B, there is tea and coffee there. It is a boutique roastery, so everything there is roasted by hand and, sourced around the world from women-owned businesses that they put seed money into. They build these businesses, and they have great relationships worldwide in Latin America and Africa, etc. So I love my Coachella Valley coffee, and I love the people at Coachella Valley Coffee, and I encourage you to buy some. Get 10% off on the website with Mark T at checkout. So that's the word on our coffee and on our website. Smash the like button.
Smash it with your iron rod.
I'm a little at, what am I trying to say, Albert? I'm a little out of sorts without my darling Kim in the mix. It's a little weird. But I do adore my Kim, and I hope that she'll be back next week. We continue to soldier on without her, and so we do. On Fridays, we feature a segment curated by Albert. He works hard all week, all month. I mean, there's no off switch on Albert.
Albert, thank you.
And so he's always looking, culling emails, various publications for the best stories from the state that always serves up a little something odd. This is Friday Fabulous Florida.
It's time for Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
A look at the weirdest stories from our weirdest state.
And we start with a Florida dude accused of impersonating a CIA official.
What?
That's a great, great bluff, if you can pull it off. That's right. This guy was caught with guns and fake federal agent badges. He is arrested on I-75 in Collier County. They pulled over 63-year-old Jorge Alberto Alfonso's pickup truck, and the truck had flashing red and blue emergency lights on while heading northbound on I-75. The troopers at the scene, they found numerous things that...
What can you tell us about the scene?
Okay, I'm telling you. They found numerous guns, passports, a bulletproof vest, and fake federal agent badges, which included the CIA and other agencies. I mean, to be honest, to be fair to the guy, it's easier to get fake badges than to actually get into the CIA. You got to go through a whole program. Why not just get the fake badge? But look at this. He had fake passports and badges. Look at them. They're splayed across the back trunk there, if you're just listening. Everything from weaponry, many revolvers, right? I don't know if they're revolvers. What do you call them? Automatic handguns. and an assault-style weapon, it seems, or maybe that's a shotgun on the left. And then it's all badges and fake passports. The incident remains under investigation, according to troopers.
He had a pretty cool truck, too. That's the...
Yeah. He did have a cool truck. It's sad. He obviously put some money into this. But now it's all over. Meantime, on the other side of Florida, a man shoots off his own finger. He is now arrested after attempting first-degree murder. The Haines City Police Department saying that they're continuing to investigate this shooting. They got a 911 call from a homeowner. It was 5:45 in the evening. Someone had been shot at the residence, said the 911 call. And when officers arrived on the scene...
What can you tell us about the scene?
When officers arrived on the scene, 42-year-old Hispanic male found inside the residence with multiple gunshot wounds, Larry.
What can you tell us about the scene?
Haines City officers are saying they initiated life-saving efforts to stabilize the man so he could be transported to a local hospital for medical care. He has serious injuries. He is expected to recover. Good stuff. So that he can face court.
What?
Wow. 40-year-old Jervin Omar Mendieta Romero, very strong name, and his former domestic partner of more than 20 years, they were going through a difficult separation, according to authorities, and throughout their separation, which occurred more than 4 months ago, he was sending messages to the woman, threatening violence and death. He told the woman he would be coming to her residence. Then he knocked on the front door later that evening. They didn't answer. And he then walked to the back of the residence, removed a screen, and entered through a window. Once inside, he confronted the woman and her, anybody? New boyfriend. That's right. And he was not happy. He pulled out a gun, shot the boyfriend multiple times. The woman was not injured. He fired 5 shots, striking the boyfriend in the hand, chest, and shoulder, as well as grazing his head. And Mendieta Romero also shot off his own ring finger. Kind of poetic. Then he dropped the gun, ran from the residence, and cops picked him up, and he's now charged with first-degree murder. All in a day's work. Yeah. Florida man claiming that he blacked out on meth and PCP before trying to carjack a contractor at gunpoint. This is in Polk County. Now, isn't Polk County where Grady Judd is?
Yeah, that's Grady Judd territory out there.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
That's the sheriff of Polk County. And deputies with the Polk County Sheriff's Office sent to the intersection of First Street West and Rifle Range Road, right there in Juanetta.
What he's got going here is a situation.
It was 4:20 in the afternoon, Albert. And according to the deputies, a Frontier Communications contractor told them that he was near the dead end when a Hispanic man approached his work vehicle and threatened him with a handgun. Deputies noting that the victim's vehicle doors were locked, so the suspect could not get inside. The victim left the area and called 911. Canine units discovered the man who matched the suspect's description. And I wonder if you could show a picture of the gentleman, Irasuro Mascoro Jr. That is his booking photo. And we rate booking photos here. I'm going to give him, he's got many face tattoos. Doesn't look like there's a real coherence to the face tattoos. Maybe that's part of the game. Most of the audience is giving him low numbers, but MoDirect gives him a 9. Oh, solid 7.5, says Heather. 2.6, a lot of 2s and 3s. Anyway, he was the carjacker, positively identified, the guy with the handgun. He was arrested and is considered a very dangerous individual. He admits to using illegal drugs, has a history of violence, and is known to be armed. And he has a history that includes possession for meth and worse. But where is it? He claimed he blacked out. I don't see that part, Albert. He said he blacked out. Oh, there it is.
Yes, he's
when
just,
interviewed by detectives, he claims he did not remember the incident at all because he blacked out. And he admitted to using both PCP and meth earlier in the day. Well, that'll do it. That'll black you out for a minute or two. Anyway, good luck to Erasuro. I think he's got some days ahead that will involve court-appointed attorneys. A glamorous Florida woman tantalizes in her mugshot after being caught drunk driving on the beach.
What?
Well, it's a great headline. Let's learn. Tiffany Nevis, 35. Love the name Tiffany. Kind of suggests very Florida, you know. Arrested for allegedly driving drunk on St. Pete Beach. She shows up for her mugshot dressed in an orange jumpsuit with her hair down, seemingly unfazed. In fact, she flashes a slight smirk for the camera. Investigators saying that multiple witnesses watched Nevis as she drove on a footpath onto the sand of the beach. St. Pete Beach is known for its white sand beaches, clear waters, allowing its residents to drive on the beach with a permit. But that has to remain on the vehicle at all times. Clearly, she violated all kinds of acceptable norms, and when officers arrived on the scene, it was a different...
What can you tell us about the scene?
Well, when officers arrived, they talked to her about a routine breath test to check for alcohol. She refused it, said she didn't want it.
No, no, no.
That's right. And as a result, showing signs of intoxication and impairment, she was booked into Pinellas County Jail on a charge of driving under the influence. But that mugshot has taken the mugshot world by storm. And what kind of number on a 10 scale do you give her? Oh, my God, that's practically
this
a
has been
glam
the highest
shot.
scores I've seen throughout during you describing the segment or the story. It's just a bunch of, I got a 10 plus here, a bunch of 9s.
Yeah, people are giving her like an 11 on a 10 scale.
Heather gave it a Get It Girl. That's a 9, a 9.5.
Her makeup stayed intact, Pam says. Yeah. Good job, girl, Pam says. Right. She is cute. She's cute enough, says Santi M. Too bad I'm not 40 years younger. Yeah, there you go. You want a woman who knows how to drive on the beach. Good job, Ricky O'Bear. That's exactly it. My name is Victoria, and this is my secret. Alcoholism, says Silicon Valley Blocks. Yeah, I mean, look, she's a cute gal who loves a few cocktails and then catch a little ride on the beach. That wraps up Friday Fabulous Florida. We don't want to, but we must pick a favorite. I'll remind you of the stories you heard. The Florida guy impersonating CIA official caught with guns and fakes. When it came to federal agent badges, he had every different kind of badge, also multiple passports. The Florida man who shoots off his own finger, arrested after first-degree attempted murder, broke into his ex's place and confronted her and her new boyfriend. The Florida man who claims that he blacked out on meth. That's why he can't remember trying to carjack a contractor at gunpoint. And finally, a glamorous Florida woman tantalizing in her mugshot after being caught drunk driving on the beach. We don't want to pick a favorite. We loathe picking between these magnificent stories. It's like choosing between children. But we must pick a favorite, and so I ask you, Albert.
In the chat, the CIA impersonator is leading the chat. But
Oh, yeah.
second,
Albert,
which is
thank
my
you.
vote too.
Yeah.
I have it titled Mugshot Close-Up.
Oh, yeah.
Just for the fact that it's the highest scores I've seen for a mugshot. So just based off historical data here, that's my vote.
Yeah, I agree. The impersonating the CIA official caught with the guns and all the fake passports and all the badges. I give the guy, it's a very, I don't know, I like it. There's more there. I want to know more about that 63-year-old dude. The other stories in Florida have meth involved, which is meth PCP, very Floridian. But The glamorous Florida woman. Yeah, I'm giving it to her. Sex appeal. That's how we have it. And that's Friday Fabulous Florida for today.
This has been Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
Y'all come back now here.
Lanzetta says, for a Florida man, using fake CIA badges is pretty high level. Yeah, I guess that's true. Not my favorite group, says Karen. No Gators. Voted for beach driver, but iffy.
It's the winter time. They're cold-blooded, so I feel like they're more tame during this segment, and they're getting polar vortexes.
Thank you for reminding us, Kamish. The fact
I think
is
about
that
our Gators all the time.
Yeah, I mean, there no Gator stories. Boo! It is winter, and the Gators just they shut down in the wintertime. You want them in the spring and summer. That's when they'll come back in a big, big way. All right, smash the like button like a boss. It is a way that you help us in the world of YouTube. Costs you nothing. And if you're new here, please subscribing. Don't even consider it. Just do it. Smash it and
with
subscribe.
Your iron rod.
And hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video, all of that stuff, blah, 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 blah. Let's rock on. All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I know the YouTube stuff, I just have to do it. And I know we've been on this platform for 2 years, but it just is, I'm just still not used to it, you know. But I appreciate everybody who supports us in this YouTube landscape, which is very crowded with shows that discuss what's going on in the world. We hope that we give you a special look in a special way. And one of the ways we do that, and a happy new year to him, is talking to a guy who's forgotten more about politics than most of us will ever know. He is the great Michael Shure, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Sir. Yeah.
How are you?
Right on. I'm good.
Cap today.
Oh, yeah. Looked very country club. Yeah.
Well, Jimmy Carter, hardly a country club.
It's a Jimmy Carter. I'm sorry. I didn't see that.
Carter hat. Look at that. See?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. No, I didn't. I didn't see it initially. It just looked like and I couldn't hear you. So now I hear you and see you and realize that, yes, it's quite a... So we started the show. You'll appreciate this. I was sharing with everyone that Governor Greg Abbott sent a note of condolence to Jimmy Carter's wife. Did you see that? Rosalind Carter?
Of course,
even though she's dead. Yeah, I mean, it's... Man.
But it's really, it's all, it's the thought that counts.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. It's the thought that counts. And there was clearly no thought. All right. I want to first talk about the Mike Johnson situation. I guess he did clear.
Whatever. Yeah, on the second ballot, there were 3 that voted against him on the first ballot. Thomas Massie of Kentucky said that he was never going to vote for him. He's a libertarian. He's not a fan of Johnson's, but he's also a disturber.
Can you show Michael Shure the Massey Christmas card again? Isn't this Massey's Christmas card from just a couple years ago? I love this Christmas card. It's it's the whole family holding AR style weapons, and I mean
he wasn't the only one who did that, by the way. So
no, you're right. It was anyway.
Andy Ogles did that as well. I think Andrew Clyde did it. In any case, his wife has since passed. Actually, Thomas Massey's wife died suddenly last year.
Oh, wow.
But not by
good Thomas Massey knowledge. I was not aware of that. Anyway, so in any case, he was the first one to vote no. And please continue.
Yeah. I mean, so, and then the other 2 came off of it, and Massey was the only holdout in the end, and Johnson got the number that he needed to get. That never felt in doubt. I mean, Kevin McCarthy even didn't feel in doubt until it was in doubt, and then it kept going and going. It seemed like there were just these protestations, and Johnson, to his credit, said that I'm not making any deals. I'm running for speaker. I'm going to be the speaker. I want to be the speaker, but I'm not going to say if you vote for me, I'm going to give you X committee chairmanship, going to put you on a committee, because it's not just about the chairmanships. It's a big thing to be placed onto a committee for a lot of these members of Congress who don't know how long they're going to be there. And so Johnson, I think to his credit, said, I'm not going to do it. You just vote for me or don't vote for me. And in the end, I think he was confident enough to say he was going to get it, unlike McCarthy, who dealt and sort of talked his way into the speakership.
Right. I mean, it was a widely perceived fact that McCarthy's weakness was so manifest just to get to the speakership that it would likely be his undoing, and it was.
Yeah, it was his undoing, as we know. And Johnson, this wasn't something that he really sought in the first place. And then once he got it, like anything else, the trappings are nice, and he thinks he's done a pretty good job. And he was able to hold the House. Not all the credit goes to Mike Johnson or the Speaker for holding the House, but it's hard to do. And it looked as if the Democrats were going to win back the House, and they didn't.
What then is the agenda? The agenda now is just certify the election and Trump becomes president, and I suppose the agenda item front and center at the House is the president-elect's tax cut.
Yeah, I think that's what the first thing they're going to want to do is attach some measure of tax relief with the incoming president's name on it, and this House having that on the record, so that when they come down to budget reconciliation again in March and keeping the government running and a continuing resolution, perhaps, as we saw in December, they'll at least have something to point to and not get sort of all the blame where the government just shut down again in March. They want to have something immediately that gets on board. Hakeem Jeffries, who won the minority leader's position in the House today, he gave a speech just now talking about how he was really holding the Republicans' feet to the fire on cutting entitlements, on cutting Social Security, and basically saying, we will not cut Social Security. We will not do it in this House. No one in Washington will do it. And even Johnson was nodding as he said it. No Republicans were clapping. The Democratic side was all in ovation. So I think that Jeffries has said exactly how well he'll work. It's a very divided Congress right now, as it was before. And, just getting a couple of Republican votes or a couple of Democratic votes can sway legislation now.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Social Security thing, because it is something that has been spoken of in the broadest sense, maybe entitlements and, how they might be reconfigured, privatized. George Bush, the younger George Bush, floated the idea that everybody, sort of has their own fund they can manage on their own. Is it your sense then, just to run that out, that would be a non-starter, that you'd never really get, even if it was masquerading as some sort of reconfiguration of the Social Security program or any of these entitlement programs, that you, regardless of how you reconfigure them or you rebrand them, that they likely wouldn't pass Congress?
Yeah, I don't think that they would pass Congress. Look, what we've seen, I think, with Roe being overturned is that it works really well for Democrats. It has worked really well for Democrats. It did in 2020. It did in 2022. I mean, it did in 2022 in special elections between 22 and 24. It got a little tired later when it came to the presidential election, because a lot of people think the Supreme Court, the die is cast at 6-3, that's it. But it certainly got people going. If the Republicans were to do, as you said, Mark, masquerade some legislation that would cut entitlements or challenge the liquidity of the Social Security Trust Fund, then Democrats would have something actually tangible to run on, and there's something political that incentivizes them there. But they're on the record as saying, we're not going to be party to this, and I think it's going to be very difficult for any Republicans to do the same.
I don't know. I'm looking for things that there are people who are pinging you with questions. Harris should not count on, what is this? Harris should not count on any Trump electors. He is disqualified. I see. This is the question. Michael Shure should go on the record on this in TYT. You can speak to this, but I mean, I think the elector thing this is all pro forma now, right? I mean, it's all just going to go along in the way it would. It's routine. It might be the
It's routine, yeah. And Vice President Harris is going to have the unfortunate job of reading them, as others have in the past who have lost. And in reading them and doing that, the electors are there, and I understand why people think he may be, disqualified for it. That's a conversation for another time. The electors, there aren't election challenges that are happening right now from the 2024 election in last November. So it's going to go as it's meant to go and as we think it will go, barring anything happening that we don't know about now. But there aren't very many days between now and then.
Yeah, we discussed at some length the reasons I think there are a lot of reasons that, Trump should be disqualified, and I also think that there are a lot of reasons that there should be recounts in some of these swing states. But regardless, I sadly, I think that horse is out of the barn, although, on the election, although the reasons still sit there. And I think the adjudicated insurrectionist who will become president, I think that's a disturbing development that we could look the other way on.
I don't disagree. I obviously don't disagree. There are lots of things to bring up in terms of the legality of the last election and the job that Congress has to do in terms of counting the electors. I don't see really an avenue for that, but I don't think that every horse is out of the barn, but many are, and many because of the way the election went. A lot of the sort of gripes that people have about the once and future president are gonna go away for a little while.
The terrorist attacks, Michael, I was talking before in the first hour. These are lone wolves, it would appear, based on all these investigations, radicalized, certainly in the case of the New Orleans terrorist. This is a guy who was, born and raised in this country in Texas, and he married twice, apparently acrimonious divorce, under water in terms of finances. So he had a lot of external stressors, but he also had this radicalization at the feet of an ISIS ideology that produced some nexus of the two things. That is to say, brought together all the exterior stressors, all that crap I just mentioned, and brought it together with this ideology, the radical ideology of ISIS. What was interesting to me and continues to be interesting to me is the way in which more and more, even as ISIS was claimed by Donald Trump to be wiped out, more and more worldwide, we're seeing these one-offs, lone wolves, very small cells, produce these kinds of terrorist attacks that are just really gruesome and awful.
Yeah, here's the thing, when do we stop calling them lone wolves? A lone wolf is a disturbed kid who goes into a school. This is ISIS, right? This is how they're working. So they're hardly lone wolves. They've been radicalized and they've been sent out there. Yeah, he did it by himself, but he seemed to have the backing of real international radicals who want to do harm to innocent people around the world. And to that end, I don't know that it's really a lone wolf thing. That's what's different.
Well, when you say that he had the backing, you had the financial backing?
Yeah, he had they haven't done the forensics on all of it, but certainly when he got involved, as he said, with ISIS, as far as I know, all of these MOs are MOs that ISIS is urging their followers to do, which is to take big vehicles and drive through big crowds of people, and to have secondary weaponry with you, because once your vehicle becomes disabled, you can still do damage when you get out of the car. And this guy had a gun and got into a gunfight with the police. I don't know if any other civilians were shot. I know that 2 police officers were, and they've survived. But it's just that I think there is a difference between what we call classically lone wolf. This isn't a guy who woke up one morning, and was ticked off that his wife left him and drove a car through a bunch of people to make a point. So
yeah, but let me just press this for a second, because I do think it's an important distinction. When I say lone wolf, I mean he was no foot soldier in some established strategy of a world takeover, world dominance, even world messaging in any kind of coordinated way. No more than if I'll use a real mundane example. There's some guy on a street corner screaming about Jesus and telling us it's going to be the end of the world, and he's there every day screaming the same thing and holding up those biblical verses. He's a one-off. I understand he comes from a religious doctrine that has inspired him, but he's not backed by any of them.
And seemingly political, but there was that what happened in Germany several weeks ago. There was
exactly.
What happened in Nice a couple of years ago. I mean, I also have to confess that I don't know all the details. This isn't a story. It's a story I've followed like a lot of news viewers have followed. I've been sort of following a lot of the Carter stuff and a lot of the political stuff and that, the stuff that I generally cover. So I've covered this. I've followed this in an interested way and a sad way, but I don't know all of the ins and outs of what motivated this guy. But I do know that to me, there's a distinction. I don't know that it matters actually either. If he were
if ISIS, here's the other thing. The way that ISIS used to work is they would claim credit for a terrorist attack. You know that, right? And there was sort of an official, word, and that doesn't seem to be happening in these, if you will, lone wolf type situations, one-offs, if you want to think of it that way.
I don't know if they have or have not declared.
But you're right in the and this is kind of the concern in how we started the show, that there is a constellation of terrorist acts that do reflect a radicalized Islamic base. So
there's again, stopping these sorts of things, it seemed as if New Orleans was in the throes of doing that, preparing for the Super Bowl. But in retrospect, the Sugar Bowl and New Year's Eve should have been part of those plans, and it's sad and unfortunate, and not, I don't know if it was derelict, but it seems that in the times we live, the word bollard is a word we hadn't heard for most of our lives, and now we hear
those are the blockade things that are set up, and I like that you're always so polite and circumspect when appropriate, that because we don't really know. But I will say, because I said it yesterday, I was extremely disappointed by the fact that I thought they were sloppy with their security. There's more security at my farmer's market than there was on that street. They parked one police vehicle blocking the actual road, and then there was nothing blocking that sidewalk. And this is in a community that, as you say, Sugar Bowl, Super Bowl, French Quarter. I mean, come on, guys. You should be better at this.
No, that's true. I lived on Bourbon Street once, so I know what it's like there on just any Saturday. So if you want to do damage, it's pretty accessible. And
I'd like to read that chapter of your book, by the way. My Year on Bourbon Street.
It's a great chapter.
I'm sure it is. There is this, Michael, and I'm telling you this sort of as a news story that I feel everybody should know, and you may want to weigh in on it. But Rudy Giuliani, as you know, was told by that judge to hand over all his assets after that amazing judgment that was a righteous judgment for those poor poll workers in Georgia whose lives he ruined. He's missed deadlines. He's missed these extensions. He's hidden assets, it would seem, and tried to prevent the takeover of a lot of his various valuable materials. I'm talking about Yankees memorabilia, the luxury watches, the Mercedes-Benz convertible, vintage. And now he is trying to hang on to this apartment and place in Florida, right? And he's absolutely being dragged, kicking and screaming legally, to handing things over to Ruby Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss. But he will have to pay them every bit of that $148 million judgment that went against him. And he'll do it a little bit at a time. But he seems to be pretty committed to trying to hide everything and go to battle over everything. And again, as I say, the latest is his condominium in Palm Beach, Florida. He was withholding access to electronic devices. And apparently the judge is now saying, hey, cut the crap. You are going to have to give that up, and the assets are going to have to be transferred to these two women.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing to see. I mean, the guy was at one time certainly on top of the city, if not the world for a moment, but he was America's mayor and he was all these things. And now he's got to give up everything in New York, and they're trying to get everything out of him in Florida. And unsurprisingly, I mean, the case he made before that court is that he's trying to do this, and that some of the things belong to his son. and most specifically the baseballs and what that. But now, he's got huge legal bills too that he's going to have to pay for every time he goes back to court because he's not paying what he owes these two women in Georgia. And so, I mean, it's a really pathetic and sad situation he's in because of what he did. He thought that, like so many people in the Trump who went into Trump world, they thought they could get away with everything, including Trump, and they can't, and you saw that E. Jean Carroll's verdict was upheld last week. And so while, yes, Donald Trump gets the last laugh and he was voted back into office, the people that surrounded him at that time are all, not all, many of them are having real difficulties because of the things they did when they thought that they had absolute immunity.
Albert, do you have the Steve Bannon stuff I'd mentioned to you that I was going to play for Michael? So Bannon
Let me
is
load that back up. I'll let you know when I have it.
Okay, Bannon's a combative guy, and I mention him in the context of what you just said because he's one of those guys who's sort of like F them, F their subpoenas. We're here. We're going to shake things up. It's going to be a battle, and in a battle, you got to be ready to go to prison. And that he said all of that stuff in his podcast, which is well watched and well listened to. His latest, as you know, is the kind of adversarial footing he has with Elon Musk, because he's a no immigrants guy, and Musk is let me get cheap immigrants to do the coding, whatever the hell they do in tech world. But so Bannon is smack talking Trump's favorite donor, Elon Musk. Here's a little bit of it.
Okay, go ahead.
First off, you got to get, hey, I've said many times that Elon came and Elon's money helped organize the grassroots effort. In his engineering mind, he saw what the problem was as we saw it, and he supported it. And for that, he gets a place at the table. There's no doubt. You should. It's $250 million in June, not an entire cycle, in 5 months. But that dinner with Sachs and that check from Elon came at Biden's, when Biden, in the debate or right before the debate, and Biden, they kind of saw the numbers of where this thing was heading. They're recent converts, and we love converts. Hell, I'm a Catholic. We used to be in the convert business, not so much anymore. We can't keep what we got. But in the old days, half the saints are missionaries. We love converts. But the converts sit in the back and study for years and years and years to make sure you understand the faith and you understand the nuances of the faith and understand how you can internalize the faith. Don't come up and go to the pulpit in your first week here and start lecturing people about the way things are going to be. If you're going to do that, we're going to rip your face off. Because you can't beat us. We're not beatable. This army of the awakened is not beatable because we're relentless, and we will never surrender, and we will never slow down. And yes, if you go low, we'll go to the center of the earth. Because we're fighting for something that means something. We have meaning in this. This is why people watch this show. This is why people come to this show and all this great content people provide us. And Ben Berquam's down now, putting his life in danger again. Why do people do this? Why have they done this for years? Why did they do it for years at Breitbart? Why did when Trump started appearing in 13 or 14, we said, that's the guy.
So I want to hear what you have to say, but I also want to just note, I think the religious parallel that he uses is not an accident. There is a religious fervor that underpins a lot of what Bannon, Flynn, and others bring to the stump and bring to the conversation always. And so essentially he's saying, Elon, thanks for letting us get here on the back of your checkbook, but get out of the way. Now let the pros take over. Michael?
Right. And the religion, and I think we're all more aware of it now as we've gotten, those who've paid attention, gotten an intense lesson in who Jimmy Carter was, right? I mean, he's someone who was religious but not hypocritical. I think that he might have been the last non-hypocrite to really be a prominent public figure. That's probably unfair. I think that there are several of them, but to me, he's certainly the last one to be president in many ways, because he walked the walk of religion. And so here you have Bannon using religion, saying things, calling something an awakening, which I think is fun, which is funny, because he said, we are the awakened. So basically Bannon's saying he's woke, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, that was funny.
But using religion and then saying, yeah, but no immigrants because we're racists, because we don't want people to come across, because they're going to ruin the blood of our country. All the things that he has embraced, that Donald Trump has said, or that he has come up with. So I think when you juxtaposed to who Jimmy Carter was, and he had his own flaws, but this one was not one of them. And so you bring up religion. I'm glad you did, because the religious part of what these people are talking about, whether it be Bannon or Flynn or anyone else, runs everything they're espousing politically runs totally counter to anything that has religion involved in it. So that hypocrisy is amazing. And he's a dangerous guy. I don't know how many people listen to him, but I don't think a lot of Republicans want to cross Elon Musk right now, because they saw how much money he gave out and how he said, on that budget reconciliation and continuing resolution bill, anyone who doesn't vote for it deserves to be primaried. Well, 170 people didn't vote for it, as I've said before. Does that mean they're all going to get primaried? I don't know. But the money talks in a world that this Supreme Court electorally has allowed to do as much as they can.
Yeah, the Supreme Court allows that money to play in the game. I think this is a good comment from Eileen. She says, sorry, Bannon, your true believers are no longer needed. Trump is president, and all he ever cared about was money. Your sacred MAGA values are worthless to Trump. On some level, she's right. The real way in which Trump can build what he wants, which is his personal wealth and, I suppose, political power, is through Musk and those that he's surrounded himself with. Now, if Bannon, is not part of his administration as he was the first time, I still think he has a voice there. But I'm wondering if this isn't setting up kind of a squaring off of MAGA, that's Bannon, okay, the MAGA army, versus the new kind of Trump, Musk, Vivek maybe in the kids' table kind of thing. Whether they're not setting up for some kind of a real battle. Yeah,
I think they are, and I think was her name Karen? I think she's right in a
Eileen,
way.
yeah.
Eileen, sorry, in a way. Eileen, I'm sorry. In a way, because I see that they've gotten all they want out of MAGA on one hand, and now it's all about money. But it's also about votes. The Democrats have the black vote, but they see themselves losing a lot of the black vote. And so they want to keep all of that. And the Republicans want to keep as much of that sort of new blood that MAGA brought to their party and to their elections. And so I think that there's a real, you don't want to get caught too much thinking that it's just about the money. They need the people too, and they need the votes, and they need the energy that those people bring to it. I've always said that about these Trump rallies, I've said it over and over, that it's not so much about what was being said on stage, it was what was happening outside. So the tailgate was just as important as the game. And I don't think that goes away just because Trump won again.
Yeah, Michael, I'll remind you, attended so many of those Trump rallies, and you sort of saw firsthand what was going on. I'd love to another time talk to you about how Democrats need to reanimate their base in the way in which MAGA has. And then I'd also love to touch on in the future the fact that I feel as though there's constituencies that the Democrats had, you just alluded to one of them, that they no longer really can count on. What's happening to the Democratic Party is something that we really should talk about, Michael, because they need to find their way. I mean, their voters just didn't show up.
I don't think it's a 5-alarm fire. I think it's a 1-alarm fire, though.
Oh, okay.
I think a lot, and we'll have another conversation about it. But I don't want. They should they should behave as if it's a 5-alarm fire. To your point, Mark. But I don't. I think that there's something anomalous about Trump in 2024 as well.
Michael, people asked just yesterday, they asked, when is Michael Shure coming on and hosting again?
Yeah, well,
and
nice.
There is, I think the week of the 13th is when you are teed up and ready to go. Now, are you here all that week? What is your plan?
We're taking our business to the airwaves, Mark.
Yeah, well, I can talk to you about it, but I'd be happy to talk to you and follow up off the air.
We'll
but I want to let the
I'm
audience
here
know.
at least for part of that week, and I hope the whole week.
Okay, that'd be great.
Part of that.
But there are those who love you, and they want more of you.
Well, I feel like, as you know, I had a great time doing it. Your audience is super impressive, and we also had some good guests on, and we had some good talks. So,
I was an early adopter on Michael Shure, as you know, but I'm glad everybody else has found the gold vein that I discovered. He is great. Michael, thank you. Happy New Year.
All right. Happy New Year to all of you, and to Albert, and do we get 47 seconds of sports?
Oh, yeah, 47 seconds of sports. Anything for you and the commish to talk about? Commish, anything for Michael Shure?
His Rangers are kind of imploding, but
they are. But they did win 2-1. You'll notice last night, home to Boston. Not satisfying, but still pretty good. Niners going into Arizona. Josh Dobbs. I think it'll be fun to watch him play, but not the season we'd hoped for.
Oof.
Not at all.
No, not kidding about that. Right. Until next time. Thanks, Michael. Michael Shure, everybody. Yeah. Love it. Love it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
Y'all can all go to hell, and I'm going back to Texas.
I blame you.
You just don't get it, do you? You don't.
You cannot say you love your country.
Morning.
Where are my weed smokers at? Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess.
I love it when you're angry. We're in better shape, but I don't think we're in wildly better shape.
They pay me a lot of money for having attitude.
This is a man with anger. This is a man that has resentment towards you.
There's always been, in this country, 30 to 35% idiots.
That's pure speculation. That's not fake. That's real.
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Why are you yelling?
Right on, everybody. Thank you for being here. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. Shout out to Valerie. Is it? I don't know quite. I think it's Branch. Is your first name, or I don't know anyway, new Patreon
Valerie
member.
Branch was also a producer at KGO back in the day.
Is that right? Well, big shout out to Valerie Branch.
Big shout out.
New Patreon supporter. You know, we are really supported by the crowd-funded, and it's really exciting to see members of the crowd step up. Many of you have stepped up in big, big ways, and I really appreciate that. I mean, on behalf of everyone. Susan S. just jumped on board, and a big shout out to Susan.
Big shout out.
Patreon. Wow. Very cool. $10 a month from Susan. And Rosa edited Albert her contribution every month from $10 a month to $20 a month.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. This is great. We really had kind of some clearer turbulence on revenue, so this is all really welcome to keep us going. Janet W. from $10 to $15 a month in Patreon. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So thank you for letting me take a moment to recognize some who have helped propel us forward. Frank G. What up, Frank G? Big shout out.
Big shout out.
In Patreon, he edited his support from $20 to $40 a month. Wow.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Frank G. Appreciate that.
Not great at math, Mark, but I think that's double the price.
That is a doubling up. That is really pretty great. It is pretty great. I mentioned Mike Z. Come on, Mike Z. Jumped in for $5 a month. Thank you.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. Really, really cool. And now, I also want to take a moment to recognize many of you who are PayPal subscribers. You come through the PayPal link. Underneath all our videos, there's a link to PayPal, also at themarkthompsonshow.com. And you contribute monthly there. And I want to recognize many of you who've been with us for quite some time. Brian V., Terrence K., David. Sometimes I don't use people's last names because I'm worried about, I don't want anybody to get, harassed now that people know that you're in the contribution game. They might come out after you for money. So, but Laureen, thank you. Carol, thank you. Thank you for the Happy New Year greeting. And Dan. And Dan sent, he said, and he sent me an email as well, sent over $200 to the show. I mean, that's through PayPal. Really cool. And Gennardo, thank you. Rita, thank you. Monthly donation from your loyal fan in the beginning. Thank you for continuing the show. Happy New Year, says Rita. A $10 contribution every month. And there was one extraordinary contribution, Albert, and I want to make sure that I don't violate any, what am I trying to say? A pledge of anonymity. Somebody who wants to remain anonymous. And she has remained anonymous. But she blows me away. I am going to mention her first name, Jane. And she may jump into the chat at some point. But she stepped up with a substantial donation. And I'm struggling for words because I'm so blown away by it. And I'm going to read you a little bit of her email. I'm an OG going back to KGO, a regular listener, Patreon subscriber, and large donor on your 1-year anniversary. I prefer staying anonymous, and only once have I ever put something on the chat when you elegantly took down some troll, she says. I wanted to make another large donation for so long, but never got around to it. Today, while listening to you from Maui, I finally got to it on PayPal. I'm so happy to support you and the entire team for the community you have built. I hope you know how important you are to all of us, particularly getting us through this election. We now need you more than ever to get us through the next 4 years. We count on you, and we thank you, all of you. Here's to reaching 100,000 subscribers very soon and to many more in 2025. And I'll just give her first name, Jane. Jane, I'm touched, and I thank you. I really, really do. Wow. Thank you, all of you who've helped support us and helped get us to this point. And I look forward to acknowledging more, but I wanted to give you a little handful of those who hit us on PayPal, Dee and Coria and Enid and Patrick and Jennifer. And I also wanted to just mention this, that it's at the end of every month, Tony updates the list of supporters. And so if you're just donating or have donated in the last day or so, you'll be recognized at the end on the scroll that we post at the end of every show. You'll make that at the end of this month because that's his thing. He updates at the end of every month. So very good. Albert, there's Richard. Richard Delamater, come on, Richard. Big shout out. A super sticker. $5 super sticker, Michael
Big shout
Snider.
out.
The culture blaster has just kind of eased into the studio. Breaking fake news. Texas Governor Greg Abbott offers heartfelt condolences to Mary Todd Lincoln. I get it. Because he sent those condolences to Rosalind Carter. Scott Rittenberg, one of my favorite Scots. A $20 super chat for the Kim and Tony Employee Retention Fund.
What?
Yes. I messed up so bad today, says Scott Rittenberg. So now I apologize. I was wrong. I will be a better person. I don't know how, but I confused Albert with Tony. Oh, my God. That is a brutal confusion.
Albert, thank you.
So it's the Kim and Albert Employee Retention Fund. Sorry, Tony. Sorry, Albert. I blame the Donald. Wow.
It was wrong. It was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
Good luck, Scott. Thank you very much for your generosity all the same. I'll just mention this, and then I'll get to the Culture Blaster. Kim's dad is suffering a tough run right now, and I don't know. I've seen it referenced in the chat, which is why I'm referencing that specific. So I don't know. She must have posted somewhere a couple of details. I feel uncomfortable sharing family details unless, I'm told specifically what to say. But I've seen that she's mentioned her dad, and a couple of you have as well. So he's hitting some tough spots right now, and she's gone home to see him, and so that's why she's not on the show. And it's also why there'll be no after party live. So she wanted me to pass that on to you and to let you know, and we'll continue to update. And we hope Kim's dad, she stated it on her show. I see. Okay, thank you. She told us in the after party yesterday. I see. Okay, thank you, Peter. Anyway, so she's dealing with that. That's why she's not here, but we do look forward to her return and better news from Kim's world as well. So all of that is stuff that we will follow. Our thoughts are with Kim, indeed. And so, coming up, the Culture Blaster.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadow Stevens. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Right on, everybody. We are swinging into the weekend. It is very exciting. Gordon, California native, hits us with a $20 super chat. Says, keep on keeping on, Mark. Love your show. Well, I love that you love it. And I love that you thought enough of it to hit us with a 20. Thank you very, very much. Well, thank you. As I like to say, Michael, I like to say thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, indeed. Michael, did you get some of that Coachella Valley coffee today? I left some on the counter for you.
I did. I had to actually mop it off the counter and squeeze it into a cup, but it's delicious even secondhand like that.
I am such a crazy nut.
The best coffee in the world.
Best coffee in the world. We could try ignoring it, sir, is the mug that I'm drinking it from. Put up the Coachella Valley crawl, would you please? If you'd like to be part of the crew that drinks the best coffee in the world, go to CoachellaValleyCoffee.com and check out everything, coffees, teas, their tasting notes and everything. They even got merch. And I know some of those who have gotten hip to Coachella Valley Coffee have really jumped in with both feet. And we encourage you to buy anything you want on that site, and you'll get 10% off with Mark T at checkout. Use that discount code Mark T. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
They are so meticulous. They roast each bean individually. It takes a while, but you get quality.
They hand roast the beans, Michael. How dare you make light of the process? It's a sacred process. Almost, it has a religiosity about it almost.
It was great. I loved it.
Yes, so there you go. All right. I won't delay further, although delaying is my favorite thing to do. I'm a procrastinator. What can I tell you? This is a man who follows the subtitle films, the Marvel Universe, the DC Universe. He's a comic book freak. He's a foreign film freak. He's a music freak. How did the good Lord create a brain like the one that inhabits the skull of Michael Snider? I don't know, but he did it, and we're exploiting it. He's the Culture Blaster, and he comes and goes on a rainbow. How about it for Michael Snider, the Culture Blaster, everyone?
Happy 10th day of Christmas, everyone. I know we haven't spoken since Christmas Eve when we did our very special
that's right.
holiday edition of the Mark Thompson Show, Culture Blast.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the 10th day. We have a couple more before we get to the Feast of the Epiphany and the beginning of Carnival season, which is very dear to me as an honorary New Orleanian. But I want to wish a Happy New Year to all. Kim, sending much love to you and your family. And many thanks, as ever, to the audience, especially the regulars in the chat, who are some of the smartest, wittiest, coolest, most supportive folks out there. And that goes beyond just the contributions they make. I mean, hell, I contribute to the show week after week after week, watching these movies, coming in here and dealing with all this crap.
You do. It's asked, is Hanukkah over?
Yes, Hanukkah and Kwanzaa are both over. So
again,
Happy
Chanukah.
Okay,
we're stretching things to the 10th day of Christmas. With all the, I had a great time New Year's Eve. I went to the Constellation Club at the Formosa, the legendary Formosa.
Oh, yeah, the legendary Formosa Cafe.
Oh, my God. And, I noticed something with all the warnings about the dangers of drunk driving on New Year's Eve. No one talks about the peril of being on the dance floor and getting poked in the eye by a jaunty, pointy party hat. No one says anything about that. That is serious danger.
Wow.
I tell you what.
Yeah.
One more quick note before we get to.
Yes,
I want to
please.
talk about the best movies of the year because it is,
of course,
the end of one year and the beginning of the next, and we have a kind of. The critics have a mandate. We have to do this.
No,
every
it's
year.
true. We ask all you critics to make your top 10 list, whatever it is. Yeah.
So anyway, I was enjoying Friday Fabulous Florida, as I do most weeks earlier. And when I came up with a great reality show concept after seeing what that DUI woman looked like, are you ready? Married with mugshots.
I love it.
We pulled these miscreants together, maybe conjugal visits. I don't know. And we video the whole thing. I see an Emmy in our future.
Wow.
Okay. We can either do shorts.
It's nice to have a plan anyway.
I know. We could do shorts about what's new, and then we'll get to the best of the year. We'll kind of keep people on tenterhooks. Let's quickly
You're
go
the boss.
through.
Albert, you have the art that he needs for this segment? I'm just checking with my darling Albert. I presume you do. So let's proceed.
Hope, yes. I have all. There's a long list today.
These are quickies first. What's opening or what's recently opened that we didn't get to. Let's kick it off with
thank you.
Okay, go
with
ahead.
The Damned, which is a horror movie of sorts. The Damned, not the punk rock band, nor the 1969 movie about the rise and decadence of the Third Reich in Germany, although that, which was directed by the esteemed Italian filmmaker Luchino Visconti, is a masterpiece, but instead, The Damned, which is directed by, I believe, by an Icelandic director with English language speaking leads and supporting players, is a chilly, atmospheric horror movie set in the 19th century at a fishing village of sorts. It's a fishing outpost on the edge of a frozen waste of, I guess, northern sea. And a widow there is in charge of this boat. Her husband had run the fishing camp and died, and so she's now in charge of these guys, and things are getting pretty brutal. And a ship sinks off shore, and they don't go out to rescue anybody, and then they're haunted by something or other. I don't know. It's there are Icelandic superstitions and the suggestion of vengeful ghosts, and people are turning on one another, and it's got claustrophobic. Yeah, there's a lot of outdoors and snow drifts and what have you, and frozen wastes, but it's still it's got that remember The Thing?
Sure, of
the
course.
one with
absolutely. That's one of my favorite
the one with
movies.
Kurt Russell,
absolutely.
The remake of the 50s.
John Carpenter.
Yeah, it's got that kind of, you're stuck in the frozen wasteland and something's wrong. Is it as good as John Carpenter's The Thing? Nah. But it definitely has its moments, and the young actress Odessa Young as the widow Eva is real good. And the director Thorder Paulson, and he co-screenwrote with is that a thing? Screenwrote with Jamie Hannigan. It's okay. It's not great, but it's okay.
All right.
And I would suggest to you that if you're interested in this kind of thing, you may want to check it out. In the meantime, it's
in theaters.
Yes, but limited, select theaters.
All right.
Okay, moving along quickly. Oh, here's a movie I really, really liked. It's called Los Frikis, Frikis, and it is based on true stories and what have you. It's a coming-of-age movie. It's in the early 90s in Cuba. And it's about this kid. He's 18. His name is Gus or Gustavo. And his brother, Paco, is in a punk band. And he's a rabble-rouser and a troublemaker. And food is so scarce in Cuba in that era that in order to get 3 meals a day and comfort, some people actually infected themselves with the AIDS virus and then were then sent to sort of makeshift sanitariums where they were cared for.
Wow.
And Paco and his punk bandmates decide they're going to do that. So they inject themselves with tainted blood. They are HIV positive, and they, are sent off to these camps. And the kid wants to join his brother, and your heart is breaking at the thought of what they've had to do because it's a survival tactic.
Sure.
But nonetheless, the kid considers doing this and kind of chickens out, but convinces a friendly doctor to say that he's HIV positive so he can join his brother. There's a lot of hard-edged rock and roll. The kids are listening to radio broadcasts from the States and, rocking out. They have their own little band at this kind of sanitarium community. And it's heartbreaking and powerful. I thought it was really well done on a lot of levels. And
where is that? Is that in theaters?
It is in theaters, select theaters, if you will.
The true story, Los Fricas.
Well, no, it's based on true circumstances.
It's based on true events.
And it was written and directed by the team of Tyler Nilson and Michael Schwartz, despite the fact that it is mostly in Spanish.
Wow.
These are the two guys that wrote and directed The Peanut Butter Falcon, which is an absolutely charming indie film about a kid with, I guess what is it called? The disease where you're sort of functional, but
you got to give me more.
No, I know. A handicapped kid who really wants to be somebody special. It's a lovely film. This is also really, really well made, I thought, and really good, and has a lot of heart. It's called Los Fricas.
In select theaters.
In select theaters. There is a beautiful Italian film that I believe is Italy's submission to the Oscars for Best Foreign Film. It's called Vermiglio, and it's set in the Alps, and God, it's gorgeous. It's also set during World War II as things are winding down, and some people are coming back home, people are missing, and we see life in this alpine village, and, it's a way of life that probably doesn't exist anymore or surely won't exist over time. And there are families involved, and, veterans from the Italian army show up as if, we've been freed, the war is nearly over. They get involved with the locals. And we end up that, in fact, this soldier who is a deserter, essentially, marries, and it kind of creates all of this sort of familial tension and circumstances that play out over the course of the movie. And it's so beautifully done. But to see this life on film, and I guess the director, Amora Del Perro, who also co-wrote the script, is basing it on things that she knew from her own family and growing up, I think, in a circumstance like that, I guess. And it's also inspired by a lot of classic Italian cinema. I thought it was very beautiful and a kind of, I don't know that people are going to seek it out. It is a subtitle situation, but it is
You're hitting us with a lot of subtitle stuff right off the top.
Well, too, one of them is written and directed by a couple of Americans, so,
Yeah, but you still got to read subtitles.
Oh,
I got no problem with it, but I'm just saying,
dude, you can read.
I
know
right
you.
out of the chute.
All right, here's something without subtitles, and it was surprisingly good. We missed it when it first came out, but I finally caught up to it. Juror Number 2, maybe the last movie to be directed by Clint Eastwood. Clint is in his 90s, we'll see, and it's a pretty cool mystery and crime drama. It's a legal thriller for sure, and it's about a guy played by Nicholas Hoult, who, of course, is so good in Nosferatu and The Order, and he is brought onto a case in Georgia that involves what may or may not be a murder, and he may or may not have connection to what happened, but he's brought into the jury pool and selected for the jury. And he tries to kind of impact the jury and the verdict because of his own connection to what has happened. He is joined, playing one of the lawyers handling the case, the wonderful Australian actress
Toni Collette.
Toni Collette, thank you kindly. Chris Messina plays the opposing attorney, and one of my movie crushes, Zoe Deutsch, plays his husband, plays her husband. No, Yeah, she plays the wife. Never mind.
I'm completely confused.
Yeah. Zoe Deutsch plays the wife of the Nicholas Hoult character.
Okay.
Quite good. And I thought it was solid stuff. Not great, Jonathan Abrams' screenplay strains credibility a little bit, but I thought it was pretty good. We'll wrap up with something.
Let me just ask you something on Clint Eastwood.
Juror
while
number
you're
2.
here.
Oh, go ahead.
That's juror number 2, and it's in theaters, right?
Yes, but I think it's also on its way to streaming, if not already.
Oh, great.
It's
the
also
other stuff that he's directed. I mean, there was back long ago, The Unforgiven, and then he directed what was that? Gran Torino? Is that one of his?
Yeah, it's fairly recent. It's a solid movie,
and that was pretty solid.
He plays "Hey, you kids, get off my lawn" guy.
Yeah, exactly. And
he's not in this though, by the way. He doesn't make a Hitchcockian appearance in Profile or anything.
No, but you think this is a deserving of it's respectable work on the part of Clint
absolutely.
Eastwood. Okay.
It's good, and I am not a big fan of Clint's politics or whatever, but I will acknowledge when he cranks out a good film.
How old is Clint Eastwood?
You're not going to do
No, I'm asking you.
I think he's in about 93, maybe something like that. I think
94 is the answer.
Holy cow!
94.
Well, that's close enough for rock and roll.
But it goes to what I say. I mean, I know we're anxious to flush all of these people who get old, but old people can do great things. They are great people. They bring a life of experience to the moment and to projects. And so, yeah, we all suffer physically and even mentally setbacks as we get older. But my God, when I see someone like Clint Eastwood, who's 94, cranking out a major feature motion picture like this.
Doing a good job.
And it's quality work.
Yeah.
It's like, it's worth taking note. So.
Well, as someone being weathered by the, ravages of time, I can only say, yeah, you go, boy. All right. In terms of one more little new thing, newer than juror number 2, which has been around for a month or more, I do want to talk about, in passing, Kunk on Life. The Kunk series on Netflix features an actress by the name of Diane Morgan playing a dim but pretentious, I'll call her a Dunning-Kruger poster girl named Philomena Kunk, who is interviewing people and but yeah, she's like purveying all these misconceptions and malapropisms.
It's sort of like
very much like Borat.
Thank you.
Very much like Sacha Baron Cohen.
More like
Ali G.
Ali G.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But thank you. I was going to say there was more than a hint of that. Those clueless interviews of significant people throwing the subjects into the quandary. And so Morgan does this, and she is assisted along these lines by the creator of Black Mirror, Charlie Brooker. Charlie Brooker helped write this thing, and it's kind of funny. And Philomena Kunk is dealing with big questions and big issues, and it gets to be a little much at times, but it was pretty funny, pretty droll, and it's on Netflix if you want to check it out. But be patient because there are some. I did laugh out loud a couple times.
Oh, good.
Some of the things she said.
Kunk on Life.
Yeah, I want to talk about the best movies of the year before we wrap up because it is that time of year, and again, we are compelled as critics to formulate best of lists, and I wanted to keep it to 10. And this was a great year for like neo film noir movies, and some of them just didn't make the cut, and I loved them.
So they're honorable mentions. They got honorable mentions.
Like Love Lies Bleeding, and Rebel Ridge is sort of a noirish movie.
Oh, sure.
I just feel like we can't boost everything, but I wanted to be as diverse as possible in my top 10, and all movies that I liked very much. There's quality here, and there's also like personal favorites, and I'll ramble through them. We've reviewed most of them here on the Mark Thompson Show. Nora is, by the way, this is in alphabetical order.
Okay. So this is not in the order. It's not like in worst to best. Or
no,
whatever.
Absolutely not. It's totally alphabetical.
Okay.
But as it happens, Nora might be my favorite movie of the year, and it's the first movie. It begins with an A, and it does have some noirish aspects. It's the work of indie filmmaker Sean Baker, who has made some really cool movies, very impressive, low-budget, cinema verite style films about marginalized individuals like The Florida Project and Tangerine. And this could be his best, and it actually won the grand prize at this year's Cannes Film Festival. It is a dramedy about the life and times of a Brooklyn exotic dancer named Annie, which is short for Anora. And she gets involved with this young slacker son of Russian oligarchs who is smitten with her and wants to marry her, despite, obviously the disparity in wealth and their lifestyles. And of course, she may be in over her head. There's aspects of chase and heist, and it's funny.
And, is it in English?
It is mostly in English. When a few Russians show up and start babbling, yes, you may have to read a subtitle.
Okay,
too.
I get it. Good.
But it's an English language.
I love it. I remember you reviewing it here.
I loved it.
Yeah.
And the heart and soul of this thing is a star turn from actress Mikey Madison as the title character. I had never really seen her, but apparently she was in a recent TV series. I think it was called Better Days, and I believe she played like the daughter of the main character or whatever. I just never caught her before. And in this, she is sexy and righteous and funny, and you can't take your eyes off her, Mark.
Wow, that's great. Nora, we'll go back and double. Now I'm sure you can stream it.
You can. The Brutalist comes in my top 10 easily. I know it's 3.5 hours long, and it's all about the odyssey of a brilliant Jewish architect named Laszlo Toth, whose name, of course, might be familiar because it was used by Father Guido Sarducci, a.k.a.
Don Novello.
Don Novello, in a very hilarious epistolary book called Letters from Laszlo, I think. And anyway, this fictional architect comes from Eastern Europe, and he survives the Holocaust by escaping to America. He wants to build a masterpiece. He needs the financial aid of a really rich industrialist. And it is a wonderful, albeit fictional, evocation of the immigrant experience. And it looks at creative obsession. It's sprawling. It's visually stunning. And I know 3.5 hours, there is an intermission at theaters, and I was lucky enough to see it in 70 millimeter. But at home, you're going to be able to pause it and take a break if you need to. The work of director and co-screenwriter Brady Corbett, who's done a couple other things prior to this. He's also an actor. This is magnificent from beginning to end, and graced by amazing performances from Adrian Brody as Toth, Felicity Jones as his tormented wife, and Guy Pearce, who should get some supporting actor nom love, playing the arrogant benefactor who enables Laszlo to build his masterwork.
You really liked it. It's 3.5 hours. I mean, it's got to be a really good movie to sustain you for that length.
It was quite good. A Complete Unknown is another movie on the list. Timothy Chalamet, who I always kind of poke fun at, how callow and young, but a little pretty boy and all that. Oh my God, he's so good in this. He embodies the folk rock bard Bob Dylan in all his brilliance, drive, and enigma. And he's the focal point of this movie, which is filmmaker James Mangold's very meticulously period-wise look into the rise of the singer-songwriter Bob Dylan. It drops into his life when he's 19 in 1961, arriving in New York. It's all about him launching his career in Greenwich Village, meeting his heroes Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie, and interacting with peers such as Joan Baez, who he eventually has a little bit of a romantic fling with, and they become lifelong friends. But this is limited to that period in the 60s between his arrival in New York and going electric at the Newport Folk Festival, which caused a hue and cry. We learn about his stardom and its effect on him, his romances, how he got a recording contract, and then, again, how he risked his status as a folk music icon by embracing rock and roll. Chalamet actually convincingly sings the songs and plays the guitar himself, as do others in the cast, including a tremendous Edward Norton as Pete Seeger. They all learned and studied and did magnificent work, and there isn't a false note, despite they played fast and loose with facts here. But, for instance, the love of his life at that time, they changed her name because Dylan thought it would, be an issue to call her Susie Rodolo, which is her name, and they renamed her Sylvia Russo, well played by the lovely Elle Fanning. I loved A Complete Unknown. Flo, not the waitress on Alice.
Oh, yeah, that was right.
But different Flo, F-L-O-W. Is my favorite animated film of the year. And you have competition from all of these studio franchises like, the Kung Fu Panda. Was there a Kung Fu Panda movie this year? Despicable Me 4 came out.
Sure.
And Moana 2. I mean, there were a bunch of them. This is much better than any of them. Very
That's
compelling.
a cat? Is it about a cat?
Yeah, it is. It's a beautifully rendered movie.
We love cats.
And it comes from Latvia. And the director, Gins Zabalotis, and it is Zilbalotis. Thank you, Gins, for giving me this name to wrestle with. It is the wordless odyssey of a determined black cat who is trying to survive a flood that has put much of the world underwater. And in order to survive, our little feline hero has to climb aboard a boat carrying a group of different animals, including a crane, a lemur, and a capybara. And other desperate creatures covet the vessel, and the elements are an ongoing threat. This is a simple plot, and there's a lack of dialogue, but that puts a focus on this lush visual invention. And there's a timely message here about the need to band together to deal with environmental calamity.
That's nice. That's really nice.
I thought it was lovely. His Three Daughters, written and directed by Azazel Jacobs, is an insightful look at the strained family dynamic between three sisters, two connected by blood, the other adopted, who are facing the imminent death of their bedridden, semi-conscious father in the confines of his New York City apartment. So it's kind of like a bottle episode of a TV show. Everything is pretty claustrophobic. It's happening here. And these young women, or, aging women, they've never really gotten along as well as one might if one was a sibling. But it's a wrenching depiction of sibling rivalry.
This is called what?
His Three Daughters.
His Three Daughters.
And it's how kids can grow up and apart because of nature, nurture, circumstance. And it's also how parenting and familial love can transcend biology. And it is so powerfully done, and I put a lot of it on the backs of the three actresses who played the sisters. Carrie Coon, you may know her from The Gilded Age. Elizabeth Olsen obviously has done tons of work. She's Marvel's Scarlet Witch. And Natasha Lyonne of Russian Doll and many, many other projects. They're the daughters in the title, and they play things in such raw fashion that it can get uncomfortable, but it is also gripping to watch as their conflicts boil over. Beautiful acting, thoughtful writing, great direction, His Three Daughters. My choice for the best of these film noir movies, is it the best? Maybe, I don't know. The Last Stop in Yuma County, tremendous crime thriller.
Loved it.
Set at a remote Arizona gas station and diner in 1973. The absence of digital communication back then allows for some bits that maybe wouldn't have played out in the same way if it went down in the 21st century. But director Francis Galuppi's script is filled with tension and wit, and it uses a very conventional situation, a tardy fuel truck, to strand a group of motorists, including this morally compromised knife salesman who is the film noirish lead. And they're taken hostage when two of the travelers turn out to be bank robbers on the lam. It was
really great. And you recommended it here on this show, and I jumped on it because modern sort of noir, but as you say, period piece noir, because it's the 70s.
Yeah.
It really is intriguing. You liked it so much, and I watched it, and it is terrific.
It is, and I don't know that it's going to be on a lot of top 10 lists, but it's on mine. The most high-flown, other than maybe The Brutalist, which deals with immigrant issues, the most high-flown movie on my list is probably Nickel Boys, which is inspired by true circumstances at a notorious Florida reformatory in the early 60s. It is an adaptation of Colson Whitehead's novel, which was inspired by these horrific circumstances, and it concerns a bright, motivated African-American teen who was arrested without cause by racist cops in 1962 and sentenced to the fictionally named Nickel Academy reform school, where the incarcerated are beaten and abused, and white students enjoy preferential treatment over black students, even as the civil rights movement is playing out and gaining steam. Ramel Ross directed and co-wrote the screenplay. Uses this surprising narrative approach that shifts between the Jim Crow South and a more contemporary setting. Great cast. It's a significant drama of survival, worth your time. Nosferatu is Robert Eggers' new version of the immortal vampire tale. And this is the auteur whose movies The Witch and The Northman positioned him as a master of dark cinema. In this movie, like the villain in Bram Stoker's Dracula, Count Orlok, played by Bill Skarsgård, Pennywise the clown in It, Count Orlok is an evil but seductive supernatural being who dwells within the depths of a desolate Eastern European castle during the 1800s. And this vile monster invades the dreams of an innocent young woman played by legacy actress Lily Rose Depp, daughter of Johnny. He covets her, then maneuvers to get up close and personal with her through her husband, again, Nicholas Hoult, who has apparently, rocked the world with his acting this year. He endangers both the couple and their friends with really frightening consequences. It's got this bleak, artful, gothic dread that's coming down. And also, there's an appropriately creepy Willem Dafoe here as an expert on vampires. And, oddly enough, Dafoe starred in a movie called Shadow of the Vampire, where he played Max Schreck, the actor who portrayed Nosferatu in the original silent film. So there's a weird connection here.
That is eerie.
But Nosferatu, powerful, again in my top 10. And let's wrap up with two more. Strange Darling, lean, mean, and very cool. Strange Darling involves a serial killer on the loose in the boondocks. And it gets rolling when this really rugged guy is on the verge of getting busy with a cute gal. But things don't quite go as you would expect in your typical slasher movie. I don't want to ruin anything. I don't want to spoil anything, but the story is told in a very confident, original way by the writer-director J.T. Molnar. Everything gets wilder and wilder as it goes on, and crucial to its success are the first-rate lead actors, Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner, especially Fitzgerald. Like Mikey Madison, I'd never seen her work before, and I was like, who is this? And you get veterans Ed Begley Jr. and Barbara Hershey providing support as a hippie couple living quietly amid nature's splendor. Let's wrap up. The Substance is the 10th on the list. It is audacious. It is bracing. It's smart. It's funny. It's written and directed by Coralie Fargett, and it's all about, I guess, society's fixation on youth and beauty, the siren call of fame, the perils of addiction. It is pointed social commentary and dark comedy. Here's the essence of it. Due to slipping ratings and aging television aerobics queen, think Jane Fonda-ish. She's named Elizabeth Sparkle, and she is played in gutsy manner by Demi Moore. She is informed by a slimy network exec that she's going to be replaced on her show by a younger hostess, so she acquires a black market serum to restore her youth and vitality. But there are consequences, and they are not for the faint of heart or weak of stomach, and Moore is fabulous. She's going to get nomination love if she hasn't already, and she's matched step for step by Margaret Qualley as Elizabeth's TV successor or doppelganger. That's it, people. Those are my top
I'm excited.
10.
You have exceeded our expectations for what we could possibly hope for. Michael is asking, can you ask Michael if there are any good James Bond satire films that he would recommend? Are there... I don't know where that comes from, but I guess Michael D is looking for a set. Maybe for next week you can recommend one.
I don't know. There's a few things out there. There may be some TV shows. The wit and wonder of Slow Horses on Apple in serialized form. That basically takes the spy.
Juror number 2 he loves is the Clint-directed film, mystery crime drama, Nicholas Hoult, Toni Collette, J.K. Simmons, Kiefer Sutherland. Check it out. He also likes Vermiglio, which is a beautiful film, takes place there in a gorgeous town in Europe. He loves Los Frikis. He really likes Los Frikis. It's a coming-of-age film. The Cuban brothers, they inject themselves with AIDS-tainted blood.
One does.
And it's written by the guy who did the Peanut Butter Falcon.
The team from the Peanut Butter Falcon 2 guys.
And The Damned was the horror movie of sorts that he really led off with. You really liked that.
I liked it, yeah.
Yeah, you really liked that. Well, that was more than we could ever have expected, Michael. It was dreamy. It was terrific. I felt you really hit the ball. I'm looking forward to a whole year of you hitting the ball. Well done.
I'm at the plate, and speaking of the plate, let's pass the plate, everybody. Don't forget the Mark Thompson Show relies on your contributions. Hey, speaking of which, if anybody wants to sponsor the Culture Blast every Friday, get in touch with Mark.
Culture Blaster could use a sponsorship.
I could.
Let's quickly mention that if you want to read Michael, because if you think listening to Michael's great, you got to read his stuff. TheVoiceSF.org. TheVoiceSF.org. Read his musings. Experience the greatness of the Culture Blaster. Michael, we love you. He comes and goes on a rainbow. Bye-bye, Michael.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah. Wow. Pretty pretty special. Albert, we have really overstayed our welcome here, so I'm going to...
feel it? It's the Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Yeah. We must wrap up. Albert, I just have a couple of things to clean up, and I will do it quickly. I promise. The questions... Please, Kim, give Kim a big virtual hug from all of us. We all hope her father is doing very well and rallies very soon. Thank you, Trevor. Thank you for the super chat, and I definitely will. I know that she knows that many of you are thinking of her, and we're all desperate to get good news from her on her dad. Donated to Ron, says Norma, so sorry to hear. He was a huge part of my day. And I wanted to make clear here, this came in, let's make sure this money isn't going for his daughter Laura's legal problems. She drained them of their money. I don't think that is quite fair. First of all, none of the money that goes to the Ronn Owens GoFundMe, and I did research this, okay? So I'm not coming to you with stuff I just heard. I went right to it. I had a long conversation and really saw the math. None of the money that's been solicited in Ron's GoFundMe goes to any legal issues at all. And Ron's need for money and need for financial support is related to his health situation. There is an organized campaign, apparently, to disparage his name and to disparage the name of his daughter and his family. And that I know, again. So this is stuff that has been presented to me. It's kind of been a little cottage industry, this world of trying to go after him on this. I don't know what it's about, but it is not at all true that any money goes to any kind of legal bill that the Owens have or anything like that. That is just not accurate. And I even told you what Ron and Jan both told me. And they said, listen, tell your people if they can help us, that'll be great, but don't break the bank to do it and don't give us your last dollar. So, I mean, if they were scam artists or whatever, they wouldn't be saying stuff like that. That's not what scam artists say. It's offensive to me that it would be suggested that they're scam artists. They simply are not. So I wanted to handle that because that was, I think, showing up in places along the way. Albert, do you have any last-minute stuff that I have to deal with before we say goodbye? We're well over our allotted time.
Well over. We had this one from Peter Newton. It was a time waster, but I'm going to save this for next week.
All right. Michael Shure was on time too much, so I gave a $5 for more classic Mark Thompson time wasters. That's why I'm here and more. Yes, I will have more time wasters for you next.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Next week, I promise. You can count on it. I am loving everyone who has supported the show, who's joined the show, who's found the show, who's shared the show. It's kind of the way stuff works these days. And all of the impediments to getting us from here to there, we continue to take those challenges in every day and handle them. All right, now, Albert, will you be back next week? Your regular scheduled time. Okay. All right. I will be here. Kim, we hope, will be here, but she may not be, and I'm counting on all of you to be here. No after party live because of Kim being out of town, obviously. But everyone have a great weekend. Thank you for all the ways you show us love. And now the great Shadow Stevens.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Out of time, everyone. Thank you. And until
Bye-bye.
Monday, Happy New Year and bye-bye.